The purpose of this lesson is to teach you the basics of page layout. What I have done is I took a copy of the basics of web design page and I deleted the style and I changed the title and the header. So that's all that I did to start this document. What I want to play with to start with is my font over here. I don't want a serif font, I want a sans serif font. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the body CSS element. And then for this, I'm going to change the font family to Arial. Save it, refresh. Now the whole thing is Arial. Everything that we've played with so far has been this standard layout where it just goes straight down the page. When you go online, you'll notice most websites are not laid out like this. We want to fix that. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to play with the box model. And we're going to play with some things called a wrapper. Now what I want to do is I want to have the header across the top. I want this to be centered. I want the links to be down the left side, and then I want the body to be over here. So I want to see what's called a two-column layout. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to start with putting things inside of what's called a wrapper. So I'm going to make a new division, and I'm going to call it wrapper. Okay, now that wrapper is going to start above my nav and it will end after the body div or the content div. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is I want to put my navigation area in its own div, and I'm going to call this left column. Okay, so that begins before the nav and it ends after the nav. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to put my content div inside of its own column also. Okay, so I'm going to say div, its ID is going to be right column, and this starts above the content div, and it also ends right after the content div. Okay, so you'll notice this is getting a little hard to follow to see what div belongs to what. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my nav, I'm highlighting from the beginning of my nav to the end of my nav, and I'm going to indent that. And then my left column, I'm going to indent this. So now I can see that this div contains this div, which contains this nav, which contains this unordered list, which contains this list items. Makes it a little easier to see it. Okay, so now the left column and the right column, these are all indented. And you'll notice one thing that Notepad++ does is that it'll show me that this div here belongs to this div here. So I want to indent all of this. And then I want to take my content div all the way down to the highlighted div and indent that. Now it makes it a little bit easier to see what belongs to what. So I can see that this content div is inside of the right column. I can see that this left column and this right column are both inside of this wrapper div. Okay, so realistically, I haven't changed anything. If I come over here and I refresh, nothing changes. Okay, but what I have just done is I created areas on my page that are defined. And so what I can do is I can take this wrapper, this left column, and this right column, and I can actually come up here and apply styles. So I'm going to do my left column. And I'm going to make the border 1 pixel solid black. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the right column. Now when I come over here and refresh, now I can see that they are in their own little areas, and it'll make it where I can start breaking the page down and I can see some other information. Okay, I also want to do this for the wrapper itself. Okay, if you notice, this just got a little bit bolder. It didn't do anything else except just simply define an outline area. Now I don't actually have to use a wrapper, but by defining a wrapper, what will happen is if I have elements inside of here that don't have a background color defined, if I apply all of that to the wrapper itself, then it will make it where those things will inherit the background color from the wrapper. Now I want my title to also be inside of the wrapper so that I can play with it. We're going to start making this thing look more like regular web pages. So I'm going to take my header and we're going to put that inside of our wrapper div. Okay, so now you see the page layout basics is inside of the wrapper. And if you notice, the border is still all the way around everything, so it makes it where we can see what belongs where. Alright, so let's see, the copyright that's down here, I want to play with that a little bit. I don't want that thing to be quite so big. I don't want it to be I don't want it to be on the left, so I want it to be centered, so I'm going to do my footer. And we played with the font size last time. And I want it to be 80% of what it should be. And I want it to be centered. So I'm going to change the font size to 80 EMs. I'm going to change the text align to center. And there we go. So now my footer is centered and smaller. I'm going to do the same thing with my header. Okay, so this one I'm going to leave the size alone, but I just simply want to text align it to the center. I'm going to change some colors of these borders just so you can see a little bit easier what they are. I'm going to change this left column to red. And remember, in a production environment, I would not want to use pure colors. We want to use some sort of toned down colors. This is just strictly for purpose of this lesson. Okay, so now you can see that the red is going to be my left column and the green is going to be my right column. Okay, so what I want to do to be able to make this on the left is we're going to play with what's called float. And what I want to do is I want to take the entire left column and we're going to float it. So I'm going to take left column and I'm going to take float. And what float does is it takes this item and it will wrap it to the left or the right or the center of whatever it should have actually been in. Because right now it's a block level element. I don't want it to be block level. I want it to be an inline element. I want the system to treat it like an inline element, and the way to do that is with this float. So I'm going to float it to the left. Now, when I float it to the left, though, it's going to be a little bit skinny. So I want to control its size. So I'm going to make it 150 pixels wide. So I'm going to change the width to 150 pixels. And then when I refresh the page, you'll see what it did is it actually just moved it over to the left, and all of the stuff that's on the right side in the right column, it now wraps around this. Now I don't want this to wrap, so what I want to do is I want to move this left border over. So I'm going to take the right column and I'm going to change its left margin. Now if this left column is 150 pixels wide, I don't want to make this left border right at 150 pixels because it'll cram the two of those together. So what I'm going to do is add a couple of pixels. So I'm making this 155 pixels, so that way there's a little bit of an indent, and now I get something that looks like this. Now this is what we're used to seeing, so that our links go down the side. So let's add a couple of links just so we can see what it looked like. I'm going to add some links for pages that we don't actually have yet. We will add these later. Typically we'll have an About Us page. We will typically have a FAQ page, or frequently asked questions. and we will frequently have a contact us page. And there are our links. So now this is beginning to look more like what we're used to seeing for a two-column layout. This is their typical page layout. Even though this is our typical layout, we're not used to seeing links over here to have bullets on them, so we want to get rid of these bullets. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to play with the nav CSS element over here. Okay, so we want to manipulate the entire nav block itself. So I'm going to turn on a border just so you can see what it's like. Okay, so this will affect that nav. And notice that just got a black border around it. So if you notice, the red is on the outside of the box and the black is inside because we put the nav inside of another div called left column. And that will affect the way that the borders are applied. Okay, so I want to affect something that's inside of the nav, and what I want to play with is the unordered list. I want to make it where the unordered list does not have a it does not have the bullet. So what I want to do is I'm going to tell it inside of the nav area, wherever we see a UL, do this stuff. Okay, so what do we want to play with? Well, we want to change the list style type, and we're going to change this to none. And what we're doing is we're telling it, hey, turn these bullets off. And there they go. So what I've done is the entire nav area, everything on the outside, will be affected here. Inside of that nav area, so what we just turned black, inside of the nav area, if it sees a UL, do this stuff. Alright, so I want to play with the links that are here. You notice that my first link is purple and it's underlined. The next one is blue and underlined. FAQ is blue and underlined, and so is contact us. Now the reason for this is these are standard link styles. The standard link style is a link that has already been clicked on, so something that you've already visited is going to be colored purple. A link that you have never been to before is colored blue. Those are just standard colors that come in every browser. I want to fix that. I don't want to make it where people can see which links they've clicked on and haven't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and we are going to add colors and styles for all of our links within this nav. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to manipulate my CSS, and I'm going to go nav, and then wherever we see an A for an anchor tag, what are we going to do? Okay, so we're going to do this stuff. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to get rid of the underline. So it's called text decoration. And I'm going to say none. And the next thing I want to do is to change the color. Now the color that I want is just black. Now like I said, in a production environment, don't use pure colors. We actually use the hex values. And make sure they're subdued tones, but in here it's just for educational purposes. Okay, so what will happen over here is all of my A tags will lose their underline. And if you notice, they now turn black. Now the thing is that these are all black. I can't tell necessarily that they are links, and when I hover over them, they don't do anything. So I want to change what's called a pseudo class. And a pseudo class is wherever I see an A tag in this nav area that is hovered. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take any A's, and when I hover over them, so notice I put a colon and then the word hover. So within the nav area, when we see an A that is being hovered, this is what we're going to do. And so what it's going to do is going to inherit all of the stuff. So notice the nav area has the border. The nav UL has this stuff. The nav A has this stuff. So what do I want to do in here is I want to override things that are in the nav A area. So when I hover over it, what's going to be applied? Because when I move my mouse off of it, it's going to go back to just being a regular nav A. It's only a nav A hover when I'm holding my mouse over top of it. So I just simply want to change the color to this to say like a blue. Okay, so now if I refresh, notice I still have black, but what happens is when I take my mouse over top of it, now they turn blue. Okay, so I also want them to be underlined. I want them to be underlined when I hover over them. So my text decoration text decoration underline for the hover will make it when I hover over them, they get the underline. Now if you notice, our links are on the left side, and this is not always the case. There are a lot of times where we don't want the links over here. We want them to be up at the top of the window. So we're going to do it the same way that we did with the links on the left, but we're going to create another navigational area. To do this, I'm going to create a new div, and I'm going to create it right between the header and the left column. Okay, so I'm going to call this top links. And the stuff that I'm going to put into here is actually going to be the exact same thing that I have under the left column. I want it to be the exact same links. So I'm going to copy just my unordered list and paste that into here. Okay, so this is my unordered list. That is my links to go across the top. When I refresh, I now get them at the top. Alright, so my links are up here at the top, and if you notice they look just like these, but I want these to be styled the same way, but I don't want them to be tall like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some features here to it for the CSS that will allow us to fix that. Okay, so I want to play with the top links area. And because I called it top links and it was a div ID, I'm going to use the # top links. And then now what do I want to assign to it? Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of things. I want to set it where I actually want to create a border around it so you can watch what happens. So I'm going to do border 1 pixel solid orange. Refresh, now we get a border around it. If you notice, this is a block level element. We actually don't want that, so I'm going to show you how to fix that in just a minute. Okay, so what I want to do is within my top links area, I have an unordered list. So I'm going to say top links. Okay, so top links UL. So anywhere that we have the top links area that there's a UL inside of there, what do we want to apply to it? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the bullets. I don't want to see those anymore. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a border around it so you can see this happen. So I'm going to put border 1px solid. Let's do blue this time just to have a different color. And so you'll notice the orange is the top links area, the blue is the unordered list. And so the blue is the section that I actually want to play with. I want to manipulate where that is located. Alright, so just like we did before, I want to make these black and I want them to turn blue and then underline when we actually hover over those. So in my individual top link anchor tags here, wherever I see an anchor tag, what am I going to do? And then conversely, when I see a top links anchor tag that I hover over, what gets done here? So in our top links A, I'm going to turn off the text decoration. And we're going to color them as black, just like we did before with the left column. Okay, but when we hover over it, I want to underline it, and I want the color to be blue. Okay, so now it's looking more like the one down below. Alright, so I don't want it to be tall like this. I want them to go wide. And the way that we do this is we need to display this as an inline item. And what happens is when we create an unordered list, each list item will automatically create a new line break, and I don't want it to do that. Instead, I want these to show in line. Okay, so what I'm going to do for my top links, anywhere that I have a top links LI, so a line item, whenever I have a top links LI, how do I want to handle it? Well, I want to display those items in line. Okay, so now when I refresh, now they show up across the page. Alright, so I have a couple of things I want to do. I want to make it look a little nicer. Usually when we see these type of links at the top, we usually see them centered on the page. The problem is if I just try to center it, it actually won't let me center it, because if you notice, the blue is the division area. And I don't want that division area to be all the way across. I want to center it. So if I just try to center that blue section, I can't do it. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the system, hey, instead of displaying this thing as an inline item, display this whole blue area as it would if it were a table back in the old days. Alright, so what I'm going to do is under the UL section, this one I'm not going to display it in line, I'm going to display it as if it were a table. And now if you notice, what that does is it makes the blue area just the width of the items that are contained within it. Okay, so I have this blank area over here on the side I want to get rid of. Well, that's inside of the item, so that's our padding. Okay, so now that helps a little bit there. And now what I can do is I can play with the margin. I can set the margin left to auto and margin right to auto. And now what that does is centers that entire div. So all the stuff that's inside of there is now centered. Alright, now we're not used to seeing links like this. We're used to seeing them with little dividers. And the way that we do that is to simply add some extra line items. So I'm going to create a line item that is a non-breaking space, a vertical pipe, that's shift and the backspace key above, or sorry, backslash key above the enter key, and then another non-breaking space. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and paste it after each item. Okay, so now that gives us our little dividers in between each of these. Alright, so I don't want to see the blue border around this thing anymore, so let's turn that off. And that was up here. There we go. So now we have our links that are displaying like this. Alright, so to make it look a little nicer, I'm going to turn off all of these borders that I turned on the way. So I don't want this orange border. Let's see, we had our left column has the red border, I don't want that. And then our right column has the green border, and we don't want that. And so there's our basic page layout. Now if you notice, it's not very pretty. So what we need to do is we need to make it look a little nicer. And let's see, on my left side here I have another border there that I want to get rid of. That's my nav area. Okay, so there we go. Now we have our basic page. And I want to make this look a little nicer, so what we're going to do is we're going to play with some colors. So what I've done is I've gone to Peloton and I've selected a color palette that I like. It's just a very light blue, and it's just for the purpose of showing you how this works. What I want to do is we're going to apply some colors to different areas. So I'm going to apply a color to the body background. I'm going to apply a color to the wrapper, because anything that's in the wrapper that doesn't have a background color will get applied. We'll apply a color to the main body area, the content area, and we'll apply colors to our header, our top links, and our nav areas. So what I want to do is I'm going to use the one of these darker colors as my body background color. So copy that. Okay, so our body, we want background. color. Okay, so I'll show you how this works. All right, so now the body background is the very backmost layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put other colors on top of it to make it look a little nicer. Okay, so the wrapper itself, that one I'm going to make it a little bit of a lighter color. So I'm going to choose this color. Okay, so the wrapper is right here. Pound sign, save it, refresh. So notice only the wrapper section lightened up a little bit. This outside section didn't change color at all. Okay, so then I want my links over here to be in an even lighter section. So I'm going to lighten this up just a little bit. And we'll take this grayish color. And that is our left column that I've lost. Here it is. Okay, and then the last thing I want to do is I want to make this section here white. And that section is our right column. And let's do this right. We're going to do pound, and then all the colors turned on. And there we go. We have something that has definite divisions in it. We know that these are links over here. These are links at the top. And we can go ahead and make it look prettier based on how we want to size these. And we'll get more into how to make it look a little bit better in future lessons. The last thing that I want to do to make it look a little bit nicer is we are going to add an image. Now I still have my graphic that I used before, the smiley face. So what I'm going to do is in this first paragraph, I'm going to insert an image. So my image is going to be, it's under the images folder, so images / and what's called smiley.png. We give it an alt tag. Okay, I need to set its width and its height. Okay, so now I have an image that's in here. Okay, so when I create this image, what it will do, image is, it puts the image here at the beginning, but I don't want it at the beginning. I don't want it to word wrap like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a style to this. And I'm going to say style equals float right. We can float items to the left or to the right, and depending on where we float them will dictate where they show up on the page. So now I have my image that's here, and I can do more things, like if I want to, I can set a padding of 5 pixels, give myself a little bit more room for the picture. That way it moves it away from the edge. I can create even more if I wanted to. But that way the words aren't touching the picture, or they aren't quite so close. But what it did is it actually just created a little block level element for that picture, and it is wrapping all the text around that block level element. So we're taking an item that is not a block level element. Remember, an image is a span element, it's inline. And instead of making it an inline item, we're making it a block level, and then we're allowing things to wrap around it. So what you've learned in this lesson is the basics of page layouts, how to create a 2-column layout, how to remove the bullets from your unordered list for your links, how to make an inline list of link items, so this list of items here, how to change the decoration and the color, and then also by creating these in different areas, now we have the ability to change colors for each of the items.